And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity. But I think for my brother, this is something he's been waiting for.
The story shifts in a dramatic way as whispers inside royal circles begin linking Queen Elizabeth's private sapphire collection to a growing tension behind palace doors. And it all starts with claims that reach far deeper than anyone expected. For decades, these sapphires were never just jewelry. They were treated like silent treasures, locked away from public reach, rarely shown and heavily protected under layers of tradition and secrecy. And now, reports suggest that Princess Anne may have stepped into the situation with serious intent, allegedly pushing for Queen Camilla's daughter to return certain pieces tied to what some insiders call the late Queen's hidden legacy. This sudden move raises intense questions about what triggered such a confrontation inside the monarchy and why now, at a moment when the royal image is already under constant global scrutiny. The tension builds even further as speculation spreads across royal watchers who are trying to understand what could have caused such a sharp divide, especially when the palace itself has refused to confirm or deny anything at all, keeping everything locked behind silence that only fuels more rumors and theories. Princess Anne, known for her strict loyalty to royal duty and her no-nonsense attitude, is being portrayed by insiders as someone who would not hesitate to defend her mother's legacy if she believed something was being mishandled or misrepresented. And this is where the controversy becomes even more explosive, because it raises the question of authority, inheritance, and control within the royal family structure itself. For many years, Queen Elizabeth's sapphire collection was spoken about in almost mythical tones, like something reserved for history books and rare public appearances. But now it is being dragged into a narrative filled with suspicion, emotional weight, and claims of internal disagreement that paint a very different picture of palace life. The idea that such deeply symbolic jewels could become the center of a private dispute has shocked observers who once believed the monarchy operated with absolute unity. But now that image is cracking under the pressure of modern scrutiny and constant media attention. At the heart of the discussion lies Queen Elizabeth II's sapphire legacy, a collection that was never just about luxury or appearance, but about identity, memory, and the quiet power of symbolism that followed her throughout her reign. And this is where the story becomes even more emotionally charged. These jewels were tied to major life moments, including her early years as a young princess stepping into royal duty, her marriage in 1947 when King George VI gifted her a sapphire set, including a necklace, earrings, and brooch, and each piece carried emotional weight that went far beyond its material value. As time passed, the Queen herself expanded the collection, carefully shaping it into something that reflected her personal style and sense of duty, most notably through the addition of the Belgian sapphire tiara, which she personally commissioned and refined to match her vision of royal elegance and restraint. This was not just decoration, it was identity in physical form. And every time she wore these sapphires at public events, they became a visual message of stability, tradition, and strength during periods of global uncertainty. One of the most powerful symbolic moments came during her Sapphire Jubilee in 2017, when she marked 65 years on the throne and wore the full sapphire set in an official portrait that instantly became iconic, showing a monarch who had carried both personal sacrifice and national responsibility across decades of service. That image didn't just represent jewelry, it represented endurance, leadership, and the emotional weight of a reign that shaped modern Britain in ways still felt today. And that is exactly why the current controversy has struck such a nerve among royal watchers. Now, the focus shifts sharply toward Queen Camilla and her connection to these sapphire pieces, and the questions surrounding her role have only intensified since Queen Elizabeth II's passing in September 2022, which marked the end of an entire historical era and forced the monarchy into rapid emotional and structural adjustment. During this transition, reports began circulating that Camilla had appeared wearing the Belgian sapphire tiara at major public events. And while official explanations describe this as a gesture of continuity and respect, not everyone inside or outside royal circles interpreted it that way. Some critics argue that the timing and visibility of these appearances created a powerful symbolic shift, suggesting that the jewelry once strongly associated with Queen Elizabeth was now being visually reintroduced under a different royal identity. And this interpretation has fueled debate about whether tradition is being preserved or subtly reshaped. Others insist it is simply part of royal inheritance practices and ceremonial continuity, where significant pieces naturally move within the royal household depending on role, status, and occasion. But even that explanation does not fully calm the growing speculation. What makes the situation even more complex is the silence from Buckingham Palace, which has neither confirmed nor denied the allegations, leaving a vacuum that quickly fills with interpretation, suspicion, and competing narratives from royal commentators and insiders alike. In environments like this, even small gestures become magnified, and jewelry becomes more than ornamentation. It becomes a signal, a message, and sometimes even a perceived challenge within the structure of royal representation. At the center of it all remains Princess Anne, who is often described as one of the most disciplined and duty-focused members of the royal family, someone who values tradition and preservation above public drama. And this portrayal has led some to believe that if she truly intervened, it would only be because she felt a line had been crossed regarding her mother's legacy. This transforms the entire situation from a simple jewelry discussion into something far more intense, involving loyalty, memory, and the invisible rules that govern royal inheritance and responsibility. The controversy deepens further when considering how royal symbolism operates, because within the monarchy, objects like sapphires are never just personal possessions. They are historical markers that carry emotional and institutional meaning across generations. And this is what makes every claim surrounding them so sensitive and explosive at the same time. Even the suggestion of private ownership or disputed possession becomes enough to ignite public fascination, especially when it involves figures as prominent as Princess Anne and Queen Camilla's family. Ultimately, the growing attention around Queen Elizabeth's sapphire collection reveals how fragile perception can be inside the royal world, where tradition, legacy, and modern interpretation constantly collide in ways that are both visible and hidden at the same time. And the situation continues to evolve under intense public curiosity and ongoing silence from official sources. A sharper wave of interpretation began forming as royal watchers revisited Camilla's public appearances, and many started believing the entire visual presentation was far from accidental, but instead carefully curated to send a stronger message than anyone first realized. To some observers, it looked highly deliberate, almost staged in a way that suggested every detail had been thought through, from clothing choices to the placement of historic sapphire jewels that carried emotional weight far beyond their surface beauty. These interpretations quickly spread, especially among insiders who claimed that Camilla was not just wearing royal pieces for tradition, but potentially stepping into a deeper symbolic position within the monarchy's long and layered history. The conversation became even more intense when theories began circulating that her public image was being shaped not only around modern royal expectations, but also around legacy positioning, where appearance, timing, and symbolism all blended into a larger narrative of continuity and influence inside the royal structure. Some commentators argued that this was less about fashion and more about identity building within the institution itself, where even a single jewel could represent a shift in perception or status. These ideas, whether accurate or not, reportedly contributed to a slow rise in tension behind palace doors, where perception often matters just as much as reality. As weeks passed, the scrutiny did not fade. It actually grew stronger, because every royal appearance seemed to carry new layers of interpretation that fans, critics, and analysts were eager to decode in real time. Jewelry became a focal point, not just decoration, but a kind of visual language that people tried to read like hidden messages written in public view. While official voices continued to emphasize unity, respect, and tradition within the monarchy, public opinion fractured in multiple directions, with no single agreed interpretation taking hold. For some supporters, everything remained simple and structured, just a natural evolution of roles as Queen Camilla stepped into her position within the royal framework, adjusting to expectations and responsibilities that come with her status. But for others, the same moments looked far more complicated, suggesting subtle changes in influence, identity, and symbolic authority within a monarchy that has always balanced tradition with quiet internal shifts. This difference in interpretation is exactly what kept the discussion alive, turning small public appearances into major talking points across media platforms. Attention then shifted sharply to a new and controversial angle, with questions emerging about how certain sapphire pieces were connected not just to royal tradition, but to individuals outside the formal structure of the monarchy. And this is where the narrative took an even more complicated turn. People began asking how such historically significant jewels could become linked, even indirectly, to private citizens, and what that might mean for royal protocol and inheritance boundaries. The focus eventually landed on Laura Lopes, who is widely known as Queen Camilla's daughter from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, and her name quickly became central in discussions about proximity to royal heritage despite her private lifestyle. Unlike working members of the royal family, Laura has never held an official title or constitutional role, and she has consistently maintained a life away from public duty and royal obligations. Instead, she has built her own identity in the art world as an art curator, focusing on creative work and private professional development rather than public royal representation. This distinction is extremely important in understanding why her name appearing in any royal-linked discussion immediately draws attention, because she exists in a space that is close to the monarchy socially, but completely separate from its formal structure and responsibilities. Royal jewels, especially pieces tied to Queen Elizabeth II's legacy, are not treated like ordinary family possessions, but instead carry institutional meaning that connects directly to the crown and its historical identity. Because of this, they are usually governed by strict protocols, careful documentation, and long-established traditions that determine how they are stored, worn, or passed along within royal boundaries. That is why even the slightest suggestion of movement outside expected channels creates a ripple of speculation among commentators who follow royal affairs closely. According to circulating claims and unverified reports, concerns were raised that some sapphire pieces linked to Queen Elizabeth II's private collection may have become visible or accessible within broader family circles connected to Queen Camilla, and this is where Laura Lopes's name occasionally appears in speculative discussion rather than confirmed fact. However, no official documentation or public confirmation has ever supported these claims, and the sealed nature of Queen Elizabeth II's will only adds more uncertainty to the conversation, leaving space for theories to grow unchecked. Because her personal distribution of jewelry is not publicly available, observers are left with gaps that get filled by speculation, interpretation, and sometimes exaggerated narratives that spread quickly through media and online discussion spaces. Queen Elizabeth II's jewelry collection itself is known to have been one of the most extensive and historically valuable in modern royal history, containing hundreds of pieces, including tiaras, necklaces, brooches, bracelets, rings, and earrings that spanned decades of her reign. While some of these items were iconic and frequently seen in public ceremonies, many others were rarely displayed, carefully stored in royal residences such as Balmoral Castle and Sandringham House, away from cameras and public access. It is precisely this hidden dimension of royal life that fuels ongoing fascination, because the public only ever sees a fraction of what exists behind palace walls, while the rest remains protected, archived, and rarely discussed in Detail. When rumors suggest that historically significant sapphire jewels may have shifted even slightly outside traditional royal custody, it immediately triggers debate about trust, preservation, and the invisible rules that govern monarchy inheritance practices. For more traditional royal observers, especially those who emphasize discipline and institutional order, even the idea of informal movement of crown-linked treasures is seen as highly sensitive and potentially disruptive to long-standing expectations. Within this mindset, figures like Princess Anne are often associated with strict duty and unwavering loyalty to royal structure, which is why any perceived irregularity involving heritage items tends to spark stronger reactions and deeper concern among those who value preservation above all else. The discussion then turns toward Laura Lopes again, but this time with a more personal focus on her role within royal proximity and whether she should even be considered part of the royal family in a formal sense. Unlike senior royals who appear regularly in state ceremonies and public duties, Laura has intentionally maintained distance from that world, choosing a quieter life centered on family, privacy, and professional independence rather than institutional responsibility. Even when she does appear at royal gatherings, such as Christmas celebrations at Sandringham, her presence is usually low profile and not framed as part of official royal representation, which makes those rare appearances stand out even more. These moments remind observers that while she is connected by family ties, she is not embedded within the working structure of the monarchy, and that boundary has remained largely consistent over time. Her position is further shaped by the complex history surrounding the royal family, particularly the long and highly publicized breakdown of King Charles III and Princess Diana's marriage, a period that deeply affected public perception and created lasting emotional and media pressure around all connected individuals. Because of that history, Camilla's children, including Laura, were never fully integrated into the formal royal institution in the way that direct heirs or working royals are. Over time, Laura has maintained a steady preference for privacy, avoiding public roles and limiting her exposure to ceremonial life, while still occasionally appearing at select family events where relationships are acknowledged but not emphasized for public display. These appearances, though rare, suggest a gradual softening of boundaries within the wider family circle, even if formal roles and responsibilities remain unchanged. And even as speculation continues to swirl around symbolism, inheritance, and sapphire-linked narratives, Laura's distance from official royal duty remains a key factor in how her name is interpreted within this broader conversation about legacy, access, and the blurred lines between private family life and institutional monarchy structures. The broader picture begins to settle into focus as Laura Lopes remains positioned within the extended royal family circle, acknowledged but still maintaining a clear distance from the official workings of the monarchy. And this separation continues to shape how observers interpret her role in ongoing discussions. While she may not hold any working royal status, her presence within family events reflects a quiet acceptance that exists alongside tradition, privacy, and carefully maintained boundaries that evolve slowly behind palace walls. The narrative then takes a more intense turn as attention shifts toward who may have intervened to calm rising tensions and restore a sense of stability within the royal environment. And this is where Princess Anne's name continues to surface as a central figure in the unfolding discussion. Questions begin to form around how any perceived conflict was addressed, and what actions may have helped reduce pressure within a situation already filled with speculation, symbolism, and emotional weight tied to royal heritage. To understand why Princess Anne's involvement is so widely emphasized, it is important to look closely at her long-standing reputation within the monarchy, where she is often seen as one of the most grounded and disciplined figures in the entire royal household. Unlike more publicly styled royals who are associated with media presence and image management, Anne has built her identity on consistency, duty, and an unwavering commitment to responsibility that rarely shifts regardless of public attention. Her reputation is not built on ceremony or performance, but on years of steady engagement, practical service, and an approach to royal life that prioritizes work over visibility. Because of this, many observers view her as someone who does not engage in unnecessary drama, but instead responds only when she believes something fundamental is at stake, especially when it involves tradition, structure, or legacy. A key part of her influence also comes from her deeply personal connection with Queen Elizabeth II, a bond that is often described as one of the closest within the royal family. Anne was not just a daughter observing the monarchy from a distance, but someone who shared years of private understanding, trust, and emotional connection with the late Queen, which gives her perspective on royal matters a unique depth that others may not fully share. Reports have long suggested that she remained closely present during Queen Elizabeth's final moments, staying by her side until the very end, a detail that has shaped how many view her sense of duty and emotional responsibility since that moment. Following the Queen's passing, Anne's role within the family has often been described as even more focused on preservation, memory, and continuity, particularly when it comes to protecting the symbolic elements tied to her mother's reign. This is where royal heirlooms and jewelry enter the discussion, not as simple decorative objects, but as deeply symbolic items connected to identity, history, and emotional legacy that spans generations. For Princess Anne, these pieces are understood as far more than aesthetic displays, instead representing continuity between past and present, linking the monarchy's living structure to its historical foundation. Because of this perspective, even small suggestions regarding the movement or informal handling of historically significant items can become highly sensitive topics within royal conversations. According to palace-linked speculation, Anne may have expressed strong concern regarding sapphire pieces associated with Queen Elizabeth II, particularly if there were questions about how those items were being managed or displayed within family circles outside formal royal oversight. Those close to royal commentary circles often describe Anne's approach as direct and uncompromising when she believes a matter touches on principle rather than preference. And this is why her name continues to be linked to reports of internal disagreement. In this framing, her reaction is not emotional in a dramatic sense, but rooted in duty, structure, and long-standing expectations about how royal heritage should be preserved and respected. The discussion then expands into a deeper exploration of Queen Elizabeth II's personal jewelry world, which many now refer to as her hidden sapphire mystery, a collection that has fascinated historians and royal watchers for decades due to its limited public visibility and deeply private nature. While the crown jewels belong to the nation and are regularly displayed during official ceremonies, the Queen's personal collection existed in a far more private space, carefully managed and rarely exposed to public view. Over the course of her reign, it is widely believed that Queen Elizabeth II owned more than 300 pieces of jewelry, yet only a fraction of them ever appeared in public settings, leaving much of her collection unseen by the wider world. These items included tiaras, necklaces, brooches, rings, bracelets, and earrings, many of which carried personal or historical meaning tied to specific events in her life and reign. Some pieces were reserved exclusively for private use, worn only in personal settings, or stored securely within royal residences such as Balmoral Castle and Sandringham House, where access was strictly controlled and limited to trusted circles. Others appeared only during carefully selected official occasions, creating an aura of mystery around what truly existed beyond the public eye. This secrecy naturally led to increased curiosity after Queen Elizabeth's passing, as questions began to emerge about how her personal belongings would be distributed, preserved, or reintroduced within the royal household. Without the Queen's direct oversight, the transition of these items became a subject of interpretation, speculation, and public fascination, especially when it came to emotionally significant pieces like sapphire jewelry. The emotional weight of these items is what makes the discussion so intense, because they are not viewed simply as valuable assets, but as symbolic reflections of memory, identity, and royal continuity that cannot easily be separated from the monarch who once wore them. This is why even unverified claims about their movement create such strong reactions among royal observers. Within this environment of uncertainty, Princess Anne is often portrayed as someone who would immediately recognize shifts in tradition or irregularities in how these heirlooms are handled, especially given her long familiarity with her mother's possessions and personal history. According to speculative commentary, this awareness may have contributed to concerns being raised when certain sapphire pieces were no longer seen within expected royal circulation. As the narrative develops further, it becomes less about individual items and more about the broader question of legacy, control, and how the monarchy defines ownership of symbolic history after the passing of its longest reigning sovereign. Queen Elizabeth II's reign represented stability, continuity, and institutional strength for over 7 decades, and every object connected to her became part of that larger identity. Because of this, control over royal symbols is not viewed as a private matter alone, but as something that affects how future generations will understand and interpret the monarchy itself. The emotional intensity surrounding these discussions reflects how deeply connected personal memory and institutional tradition have become within royal storytelling. Supporters of Princess Anne's perspective argue that such items should remain within the core structure of the monarchy, preserved for future senior royals who carry forward the institution's direct lineage. Others suggest that royal heirlooms may naturally evolve in their distribution over time, potentially reaching figures such as Catherine, Princess of Wales, and eventually Princess Charlotte, ensuring continuity across generations. This contrast in viewpoints continues to fuel debate among royal watchers, as each interpretation reflects a different vision of how tradition should adapt or remain fixed in a modern monarchy. Even the possibility of transition becomes a point of emotional discussion, highlighting how strongly these symbols are tied to identity and legacy. Although some reports suggest that certain concerns may have led to greater oversight or reassessment of how royal sapphire pieces are handled, no official confirmation has been provided, leaving the situation surrounded by silence, speculation, and interpretation from outside observers. Despite this, the narrative continues to evolve as interest in royal symbolism remains high. Tensions reportedly remain within parts of the extended royal network, particularly where questions of legacy and tradition intersect with modern family structures. But those close to the institution suggest that figures like Princess Anne remain focused primarily on preservation rather than conflict. From her perspective, the issue is not personal, but institutional, centered on safeguarding memory and maintaining respect for royal history. And ultimately, this entire discussion circles back to a single theme: how the monarchy chooses to carry forward the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II, and who is trusted to protect the symbols that defined her reign, even as interpretations, relationships, and public narratives continue to shift around them. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the royal mystery, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.